Thank you. Sit down, sit down. Sit down, sit down. Sit down. You're supposed to be polite. You're from Michigan. Sit down. Thank you, Ron, for that largely unnecessarily long and overly generous introduction. Weiser doesn't listen to advice. I said, keep it short. And he meandered on and on. What can you expect? Man's a candidate for office. He wants the airtime. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, General, all these august officials who are here today, I'm honored you'd come. And I've got one bit of advice for your new member of the Supreme Court. You can get a building at Hillsdale named after the family. It's just going to require the flower shop to sell a lot more flowers. Look, I hate to start on a discordant note. Here we are in this grand hotel. Fantastic view out the windows. Lovely day, particularly if you're coming from Austin, Texas, where it's 97 degrees right now. And yet, I'm going to start on a discordant note. What the hell were you thinking when you passed freedom to work? In one fell swoop, you have taken away the best recruiting tool the state of Texas has had for decades. We got a gigantic GM plant in Arlington. We got a big, shiny truck plant in San Antonio, Texas. We've been stealing your businesses and your jobs and your people for decades, and now you've taken away our best recruiting tool. Heck, we even stole a bank that you had in Detroit. And the FBI didn't follow us all the way down to Texas when we brought it down. And now you go out there and have this goofy idea that somehow or another, working men and working women shouldn't have to pay union dues as a requirement of having a job. What the hell were you thinking? I got to tell you, it really, I don't know if you understand how powerful a signal this was all around the country. You know, it was okay when Indiana did it because, you know, they've sort of bordered the Ohio River and they're sort of Republican. It was amazing what happened in Wisconsin, but then this gigantic, unbelievable moment when Michigan adopts freedom to work. And it gave people all across this country heart that we could break the power of the union bosses and give working men and working women an opportunity for prosperity and growth and a fantastic future in a state that's got a dynamic, growing economy. And I want to congratulate you on doing it. Really great. Now you're going to have to defend it because they're going to come after the governor that had the courage to sign the bill and every legislator who stood up and voted aye. And it's going to require you to be in the game and to give your energy and your treasure and, most important of all, your time and credibility to make certain that we identify and get out the vote. I'm focused on 2014. I'm on television, so I get to bloviate a lot. I write a column for the Wall Street Journal, so I get to get invited to these trade associations. Who's up for 2016? I tell them I'm focused on 2014. You know, you've heard several people talk about it. You heard Weiser talk about our opportunities. 7 states with Democrat U.S. senators in a state that Mitt Romney won, 6 of them that he won by 10 points or more. I don't think it's an accident that half of the Democrats in the Romney 10-plus states, 10% plus states, have retired. They saw the writing on the wall. But as we approach 2014, we better be careful and have our act together. And remember who's going to decide the election. It's not going to be just the kind of people who are in this room alone. In 2006, 39% of independents voted for Republicans for Congress, and we lost the House. In 2008, 49% of American independents voted for Democrats, and we didn't get back the House. In 2010, 56% of independents voted for a Republican candidate for Congress or Senate, and we took back the House and picked up 6 seats in the Senate. Now, the good news for us is that independents right now think and act like us. I don't know if you saw that Wall Street Journal poll or some of the other recent polls, but it's amazing how much independents are thinking like us. They trust the Republican Party when it comes to deficits and debt more than they trust the Democratic Party. They trust the Republican Party on taxes more than they trust the Democratic Party. They trust the Republican Party on the question of economy and jobs more than they trust the Democratic Party. They don't like and don't approve of what President Obama is doing. They don't appreciate or approve of his policies. 60% of independents oppose Obamacare. So as we go forth to the 2014 election, we got to keep in mind that we not only got to rally ourselves, but we got to use ourselves to go out and get those independents who think like us to bother to go out and vote. And when we do so, starting with Obamacare, we got to keep a simple lesson in mind. Yeah, look, we all know about Obamacare. We all know that every single promise used to sell that bill to us has turned out to be, I'll be polite, not true. Oh, the president said, pass this and your premiums will go down by $2,500 by the end of 2010. And instead of going down by 19%, they've risen by 18%. They're up $2,375. That's not a Republican figure. That's from the liberal Kaiser Family Foundation. Oh, the president said, if you like what you got, you can keep it. Now, he knew that was a lie when he said it, because his own Office of Management and Budget and Congressional Budget Office said that 3 million people would lose their coverage as a result of the passage of the Affordable Care Act at the time they passed the bill. Now, they've updated those numbers. In February, the Congressional Budget came out and said, we're revising our estimates. 3 million people aren't going to lose their existing coverage. 8 million people are. And the Department of Health and Human Services says, no, we disagree with the CBO. It's going to be 14 million people losing their employer-provided coverage. But other respected health economists say, no, it could be 17 million according to the Lewin Group, or 35 million according to the American Action Network, or McKinsey and Company surveyed businesses, 30% of whom said we're going to dump our existing coverage. That could work out to 53 million Americans. Oh, this is not going to add a single dime to the deficit, the president said. I love that. Not a single dime. He was right. It's not going to add a single dime. It's going to add trillions of dimes to the deficit. His own government agency at the Office of Management and Budget acknowledges over $911 billion additional spending on health care in America over the next decade, and over $500 billion in addition to the deficit in the first 10 years that the bill is on the books. And because of the gimmicks they used on it, that accelerates over time with more and more of the Affordable Care Act being paid for by red ink. Oh, I'll never tax anybody who makes less than $250,000 a year, but the bill is paid for by $500 billion in taxes on medical devices, drug companies, hospitals, and health providers. Now, look, I'm not a smart person. I didn't go to the University of Michigan or Michigan State. I'm a Texan. We're not all that bright. So in a hearing before the United States Congress, our state senior senator, John Cornyn, said to the head of the Congressional Budget Office, who's going to pay those taxes? Are the drug companies or the medical device companies or the hospitals or the health providers? And Doug Elmendorf said, oh, no, they're going to pass them on to their customers. So think about this. The Affordable Care Act is going to be paid for $500 billion in its first 10 years on the books by people who need a drug. Uncle Harry's diabetes medicine is going to cost more. Aunt Martha's hip replacement is going to cost more. Your stay in the hospital to get your gallbladder out, going to cost you more. Your visit to the doctor is going to cost you more because they're taking $500 billion worth of taxes and passing them on to you. And last time I looked, sick people in America weren't exclusively people who made more than $250,000 a year. Now, I could go on. You know what's happening on the job front. Small business is saying, I'm not going to get above the 50-person threshold. Thus far this year, on average, every month, we have lost 149,000 jobs a month of people who are working 30 to 34 hours a week, and we've gained 119,000 jobs on average each month of people working 25 to 29 hours. Why? Because if you're 30 hours a week, you're full-time according to the Affordable Care Act, so we're getting people having their hours cut back at work. Some single mom working at the restaurant needs 34 hours a week and tips in order to make ends meet, and she's been told, well, you'll get 29 hours here. Good luck finding the other 5 or 6 hours you need to put food on the table for your kid. That's what's happening. So we got to make that case next year, but it's not just enough to make that case. we have to do two other things. When the president says things that are not true, we need to blow the whistle. When he says, oh, those Republicans don't want it, yeah, blow the whistle. When he says, oh, they don't want everybody in America to have health insurance, we say, Mr. President, baloney. You're the guy who passed the bill that when it's fully implemented will leave 30 million Americans without health insurance coverage. Do you know that? That's the Office of Management and Budget's own projection. We finished going through all this pain and all this discombobulation and all this worry that's being caused among our small business people and among people who like what they got, and 30 million Americans will not have coverage at the end of this process. Or when he says all the Republicans want to do is inflict pain, we ought to stand up and say, Mr. President, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for a suggestion that people who have the timidity, the courage to disagree with you, somehow have some base motive. We want Americans to have access to quality health care and quality health insurance at an affordable price. We disagree on how to get there. Treat us with respect, and we'll treat you with the respect that your office deserves. But stop it, Mr. President. Shame on you. But that's not enough. That is not enough either. Look, we're really good at describing what's wrong with Obamacare, and admit it. You'd like to blow the whistle on him. When he says something foolish like he said in Kansas City yesterday, I mean, it just gets the juices going, doesn't it? But there's one thing that we're lousy at and we need to get better at, and that is describing what we're for. Because the American people don't want us just to repeal Obamacare. They want us to replace it with sensible ideas that will allow more people to get access to quality health coverage at an affordable price so they can take care of their families. And the good news is we got a lot of good ideas if we'd simply go forth and talk about them. We're the party that's in favor of having people be able to take their health insurance with them from job to job. We want to make health insurance truly portable. So you're never again in America stuck in a job that you hate for fear of losing your coverage. You ought to be able to take it with you. And we believe in that. We're the party of individual responsibility. We believe people ought to be able to save more tax-free for their out-of-pocket medical expenses. Who's got an HSA? Do you like it?
Love it.
Love it. So do I. I get to save tax-free for my out-of-pocket medical expenses, and it's my money. And because it's my money, I care a little bit more about what am I going to get for my money. And if I build it up and I don't need to use it, when I pass, it's my family's money. You know what? In the Affordable Care Act, they reduced the amount of money that people could save tax-free for their out-of-pocket medical expenses. Look, we believe in competition. We're a free enterprise party. We believe that competition does great things. You get better things for a lower price when you got competition. Who's got their auto insurance from Geico? Raise your hand. Yeah, right. This woman over here buys her auto insurance from a lizard in Bethesda, Maryland. Why? Because we allow competition in purchasing auto insurance across state lines. We ought to do the same with health insurance. I want those insurance companies competing for my business, driving prices down, and improving their product. Happened on auto insurance, it can happen on health insurance. Look, why is it that the big boy gets the deal and the little guy gets screwed? Why don't we let small businesses join together and pool their risk and get the same discounts the big boys get? Why don't we let people do that? We need to have transparency in pricing and outcomes. We need to know when we go to the hospital how much it's going to cost to get the gallbladder out and how good they are at it. We would need to be able to shop around. We make better informed decisions as consumers about the cars we purchase than our health care, and that's wrong. And finally, we need to get rid of the junk and frivolous lawsuits that are driving up the cost of health care for every single American. Now, I have to admit that I used to be a completely states' rights kind of guy when it came to medical liability reform. First of all, because Texas had done it. And if Louisiana and Oklahoma didn't want to, that was their tough luck. We're happy to take their doctors and their health care professionals. But then I went to Washington and worked in the Bush administration and found out that the cost of defensive medicine in Medicare and Medicaid is $56 billion a year. Those are unnecessary procedures and tests being ordered by a doctor or a healthcare professional to avoid getting sued. And guess who picks up the tab for that defensive medicine? The U.S. taxpayer. That's equal to half the cost of the Affordable Care Act a year. $56 billion. So my point is this: we better get active out there talking about what we're for when it comes to health care. We ought to insist that every one of our candidates become familiar with what the Republican Party and Republican office holders particularly. We got an amazing number of doctors. You got one of them from here. We got an amazing number of doctors in the United States Congress who have an R behind their name. And they're innovative and thoughtful, and nurses too. Renee Elmer of North Carolina. We've got an amazing group of healthcare professionals who can help speak with credibility and authenticity about this, and we better talk not only about what we're against, but what we're for. Same thing that comes to the economy. Look, the economy is not as good as it should be. In fact, it stinks. I used to go around saying it was the worst economic recovery since World War II. And that's correct. That's absolutely correct. We have never had an economic recovery since World War II in which growth was so slow and job recovery so weak and prosperity so thin as we've had in this so-called recovery. And then an economic friend of mine, economic professor friend of mine from Stanford, took me aside and said, "You're wrong. It's not the weakest economic recovery since World War II. It is the weakest economic recovery in the economic history of the United States since we got reliable numbers in the latter half of the 19th century. Never, never in the modern history of the industrial giant called the United States of America have we been so lousy at getting back up under our feet. At the current rate of job creation, it's going to take 10 more months for the United States to get back to the number of people working in America that we had in December of 2007 when the recession started. Recovery has never taken that long. And not only that, but that's just getting back to where we were. And in the meantime, 8.5 million people will have entered the job market without a job available to them. And you know somebody. You know some single mom or some mom who says, "I'm going to return to the workforce after my kids go off to college," but there's no job. You know some returning veteran who wants to enjoy the American dream and participate and start a career outside the military, no job available. You know some college kid who's got a degree in accounting and they consider themselves fortunate if they're a barista at Starbucks part of the week. Manufacturing. At the current level, you're not going to believe this number. At the current rate of job creation in the manufacturing sector, do you know how long it's going to take us to get back to the number of people working in manufacturing jobs in America that we had in December of 2007? 322 years. This state was built on manufacturing, on the brawn and muscle and brains of people who went into work and made something. And that's what our country was based on. And yet it is so anemic. I mean, our economy is growing at rates that are anemic compared to what we had under Reagan or what we had under 41 or 43 or even Clinton. Now, it's bad. And we can criticize it all we want, but we better be willing to step forward and talk about the policies that we're for that are going to get the economy going more robustly. We're for sound and sensible regulation in which, before we start shutting down coal-fired plants all across the industrial Midwest that are going to drive up the cost of making things in America, we measure the benefits. And if the benefits don't outweigh the cost by a good margin, we shouldn't be doing it. I was in Northeast Ohio recently. An American company run by the same family for 100 years, publicly traded company, makes sophisticated ball bearing assemblies. And the guy running the company, who bears the name of the company, said to me, "We have worked for several generations," young guy in his 40s. "We have worked several decades and several generations of our family to make this competitive. And we're selling sophisticated ball bearing assemblies to China that they cannot copy. And we've created jobs here and not somewhere else." But he says our two power providers say if the Obama rule on coal goes in, our energy prices overnight are going to go up 30%. And we'll no longer be competitive. And we'll start shedding jobs here, not adding jobs here. We're the people who want America's economy to be powered. We're not willing to turn this over to some nutty academic egghead who's got some goofy rule that they want to impose on the American economy because they've got some feel-good kumbaya feeling in their heart that says if we do this, they'll like us someplace else in the world, or we can stop the rise of the world seas, as the president said. We better be sensibly regulating our economy and our businesses in a way in which the benefits outweigh the costs. And that's not where this administration is. You know, we're the party. Sure, we got to pay our bills and our tax bills to the government, but we're also the party that believes in low taxes and a flatter, simpler system that doesn't require us to spend. How many of you want to do something, want to vomit when you have to write that check to the accountant for all those complicated things that have to go through for your small business? Yeah, I know, you're right there. Several of you right there. I mean, it is amazing. And the good news is that we are the party with the intellectual firepower to get this done right. Dave Camp has done an extraordinary job working with Max Baucus to lay the framework for a flatter, simpler, pro-growth tax policy. We could pass it through the House of Representatives tomorrow, but until we get a United States Senate with a Republican majority or close to Republican, there are enough smart Democrats over there who know how bad our tax system is. We get close, we can get this thing done. But it'd be even better if we had a Republican chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. But we got to talk about it. And when it comes to growing the American economy, we got to be clear that we're not only for the people who've got it, we're for the people who don't have it. I was really moved by what Governor Walker said about opportunity. And we got to remember this as Republicans. We talk too much to ourselves and not enough to the people we need to be talking to. I thought he was right on target. And I hadn't even heard his speech before. You know, it is amazing. I remember one of the most remarkable moments I had at the White House was to go on the 10th anniversary of the signing of the Welfare Reform Act. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina, Mecklenburg County. And there were a group of business people there who had taken upon themselves to organize a mentor program for single moms who are in welfare. And for 10 years, they had been involved in helping take single moms and mentor them on the road that Scott described, a road from dependency on government to one of personal responsibility and personal independence. Now, first of all, I was moved by the fact that these business people took time from their very busy lives running companies to mentor somebody. And I was even more moved when I heard the stories of the women that they helped mentor. A woman got up and read a poem about the dignity of work. And when she finished, there was not a dry eye in the place when she talked about what the dignity of work meant to her. Another woman got up and said, I'm not certain I'm making as much today at my job as I got free from the government. She said, I've never have figured out how to add it all up, but I had the free housing, and I had the food stamps, and I had the housing assistance, and I had the transportation assistance, and I had this, and I had that. And I don't know, maybe I'm making less today than I did when I was getting all that free stuff. But she said, every morning I get up and make 3 lunches. One for me and one for each of my kids. And by doing that, I am giving my children the most important gift a parent can give a child, which is take that lunch, go to school, work hard, dream big, and you can be anything in life you want to be because your mom is much better off than where she used to be because she's dreaming bigger. And I mean, this is what America is all about. And we have got to talk about our principles, our free enterprise principles, in ways that the guy who's losing hope says, you know what, I lost my job and I'm really worried about being able to provide for my family and I'm embarrassed about where I am in my life, but you know what that Republican vision means? We'll have a stronger economy and better opportunities for work. When the single mom on welfare says, you know what, God has something bigger in mind for me than to be dependent upon a government check. There is dignity in work. There is honor in providing for my family. We need to give hope and opportunity to people who are right there on the ragged edge saying, does anybody care about me? We need to give them a choice between a free cell phone and a bright and prosperous future. We need to give them a choice between being embarrassed to go down and pay for your groceries with some funny looking things or a special card from the welfare department and being able to say, I'm in charge of my life and I provide for my family and I have the dignity of doing so. Now, it's easy for us to run down the other side, and I intend to do my fair part of it. I admit it. Pick up the Wall Street Journal on Thursdays. I don't care if you read the paper, but buy it on Thursdays when my column appears, and I'll claim credit for it. You know, watch Fox as frequently as you can. If you can't watch it 24 hours a day, go to rove.com, and I'll sign up sign up there, and I'll send you a free calendar each week of when I'm going to be on TV and a free link to my Wall Street Journal column. Or follow me at Karl Rove, and I have no idea what Twitter's all about, but you could be one of the many people who gets my musings whenever I want to muse. And you'll see I'm going to keep my promise to do everything I can to run down the President of the United States when I think he's wrong. I'll also support him when he's right, like I thought he was right on Syria until he changed his mind. I was for the Syrian attack before and after he was no longer for the Syrian attack. But anyway, but we also need to get better at talking about what we're for. Because the difference in winning and losing races that are on the bubble is going to be the difference between talking enough about what we're for and not talking enough about what we're for. And it's going to come down to you. We got all this fancy technology. We got TV ads and micro-targeting. We got databases. We got big data. Reince Priebus used to think big data was when he got to go out twice on Friday night. Only happened to him once. But, you know, that's not what elections are really about. That's part of what elections are about, but it's not all about. What it's really about was written in a simple letter in 1840 by a lanky lawyer in Sangamon County, Illinois, chairman of the Whig campaign that year. You've probably heard it. Make a perfect list of the voters, ascertain with certainty for whom they will vote, have the undecideds talked to by someone they hold in confidence, and on Election Day make certain that every Whig is brought to the polls. Now, Lincoln was our greatest president, but he was also a pretty good practical politician. And that third line is the most important one. Have the undecideds talked to by someone they hold in confidence. And don't ask me why, but for somebody, that's you. Family member maybe, friend, neighbor, somebody who looks and thinks and acts like you. They'll come to, if you say what you believe with credibility and authenticity, you might actually sway them. And there's a lot of swaying to do. Thanks for having me here today.